Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast is Critical Plus.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Silverline Sunday. This Sunday, February the 19th, 2023, the year of our Lord. How's everyone doing?
Well, I'm alive.
That's good.
Yeah. I think that was too much for Tommy and Curtis last time. Right?
So let's go around. Let's get some voices for those who might be listening later to the podcast. Haley, say hi to everybody. We got Haley Martin.
Hello.
Oh, I found it.
And we've got joining us Peter Clinton, who is just a penciler. So he says, Pete, say hi to everybody.
Oh, yeah, I've just found my pencil. That's what I've been looking for.
And since you're just a penciler, you need that.
I've got the razor too. Or rubber.
There you go.
Rubber.
Are you wearing a Marvel hat today?
Yeah, I've got a Hulk hat on.
Okay. All right. I just saw the Marvel thing. You wear that just because Jerry's here, huh? And he drew
Sure.
Batman.
It's nothing to do with the fact that's the only hat I found.
Yeah, I drew Hulk once or twice. Yeah.
And we have the legendary Mr. Jerry Bingham joining us again tonight. What's up, Jerry?
Legend in my own mind. Thank you.
Well,
Found my
you said it,
pencil.
not me.
He's still looking for pencils. We got to get this guy a pencil rack or something.
I've got two pencils. I found them.
That's what ears are for, you know.
That's right. Although his are holding up his glasses, so.
I remember.
Well, wait. What happened to your electric? Don't you have you got an electric eraser, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I dropped it. I can't remember. I can't find it.
That's what happens when you have babies.
No, what happened was I dropped it and I thought, okay, it's there. That's fine. I'll pick that up in a minute. And then something happened and I don't know where it's gone.
In England, you're allowed to give pencils to babies. What? What did Roland say?
She does like to grab my Apple Pencil. She does like that.
Tommy may join us a little bit later. He forgot. He sent me a message today and he goes, "Hey man, I may or may not be able to be there because I forgot. Renee's got me busy." Renee's his wife. We're going to Epcot. So, and look who else is joining us tonight. What's up, Roberta?
Hi.
Hello, Roberta. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Let's see.
Good to
Doing
see you.
okay.
Let's put Jerry right
Good.
in the middle.
So
I
here we are.
All right. So let me try to see if I can fix this Sunday lower right. There we go. All right. So shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you like comic conventions and you like comics, Daytona Beach Comic Con is the place to be. September, make your plans. Silverline will be there. We hope to see you there. If you are in the Orlando area and you like comic books, you should visit Coliseum of Comics because they carry Silverline comics, and you can find them there with the Coliseum of Comics logo. Those are unique to the stores. You can only get those comics with the Coliseum of Comics logo at Coliseum of Comics. We encourage you to go there and get your comics. Shout out to Kablam. I don't have a comic book handy. Kablam is here we go. Kablam. Because they are digital printers and they are comic specialty printers. If you are an independent creator and you need your comic printed, check out this sweet foil cover.
I haven't received mine yet.
No, because I haven't either. They're not been printed yet. This is just
they're slow.
I think they're supposed to get to them. I don't know if it's next week or week after.
All right.
So yeah, Kablam Digital Printing, and let's see. I lost
that opening screen, Roland, that we saw with heard the music too. I didn't know where I was because it was said everything except Silverline on there.
Yeah, I gotta say something to him. I noticed that he sent me because we joined the network now, so we have a broader reach, and so he sends me the videos to play for the sponsors, and I'm like, wait, where's Silverline on here? We need to be on there. So I gotta say something to him. Pops,
Yeah.
if you're listening, yeah. There you go. Jay Lee says, "Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Jay. If you got questions for Jerry, time to ask them." So Jerry, last time you were here, we quizzed you all about your background, your time in the industry, and everything. Tonight, I want to talk to you about your thoughts on comic storytelling, and we can talk about writing and arting. But I want to talk about kind of what your thoughts on stories, what make good stories, and what some of the weaknesses you see. Obviously, we don't want to call out any names, but what are some of the
As I recall, last time you said you quizzed me. You didn't quiz me about anything because I just rambled on for 2 hours until you shut me off.
Well, so what we did. So here's what we're good at, Jerry. We lobbed you softballs,
Yeah.
right? And you knocked them out of the park, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we'll do that again tonight. We'll lob you some softballs. So
I promise I'll keep it in the park. I'll just hit grounders all night.
well, so we just know not to ask you yes and no questions. That's the point, right?
Yep.
Jerry, do you like this? Yes. Next question.
Uh-huh.
So Pete, I'll give you the floor first as a penciler. Do you have anything that you want to ask Jerry about the comic storytelling, penciling?
Something I don't
what
know.
am I doing wrong?
What are you doing wrong?
What am I doing wrong? Where do I go wrong? What's the most common mistake you probably see? I'm assuming people come up to you and say, "Hey, look at my stuff."
That's
Right.
a good one.
Great question.
What's the most common thing you see they're doing wrong? Or do you think people are doing wrong?
What do I think pencilers are doing wrong in general, or comics are doing wrong in general?
What's the most common thing you think pencilers are doing wrong?
I assume people come up to you and ask you, will you look at my portfolio, right? Will you look at my stuff? Will you give me advice? What's the most common thing you probably see from doing that you think?
Well, I remember back in the day, it's been a long time. I just started going to conventions again, but back in the day, I recall going to the same conventions year after year and seeing the same people come up to me with their same portfolio I looked at the year before and the year before that and the year before that.
The exact same art, right?
Same art, the exact same drawings. He's just and there were several people notorious for that. And after a while, you just get tired of giving them the same advice. And so for beginning artists, not you guys here, but for beginning artists, I have to say that you have to be flexible enough to make your way forward and stop playing in the same mud pile and try a lake once in a while or a stream or something. But that's the biggest problem I see is people not growing from year after year, especially young people, late teens, these people college age or thereabouts. They think they've done it right, and they can't see the fault in their work, and they just they stagnate. Or they don't even stagnate. They don't push themselves. I don't know how better to put it. Stretching beyond what you're comfortable with, Well,
let me ask you a question. As someone who doesn't art, when you say they're not pushing themselves, what would you tell or suggest an artist do to push themselves? What does that mean visually?
It means once you think you finish a drawing, put it away and start another one. And actually working fast is the most advancement I ever made as an illustrator was when I started to get work and I was forced to churn out drawing after drawing, page after page. And even though you're looking back, you think that stuff is inferior. As I said often last time I was on here, you have to put a drawing down, walk away, pick up another drawing, or start another drawing, and pick up books. You have to, 100. I can't tell you how many influences I had.
Yeah.
Growing up, and my mother, I think I was maybe 12 when she bought me the John Nagy Learn to Draw set, and then after that, I was buying comic books and trying to draw from all the different art styles that I was seeing coming out of Marvel, and but never even when I went off to art school and I was for a year, a whole year in art school, American Academy of Art downtown Chicago, where I goofed off most of the time and didn't punch much. But it was my first time away from the house, so.
Yeah.
I remember going into, I'd go in, they'd have the life drawing classes in the academy there. And basically I would cut out of, it was the afternoon class. So I would cut out of the afternoon life drawing class with a buddy of mine. And we used to walk across the park there, downtown Chicago, walk over to the Field Museum, and I'd be drawing the stuffed wildlife behind the glass. And I got bored with doing whatever they wanted me to do in the art school. But I think all of that fed my versatility, that I wasn't just doing the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
And I kept purposely finding inspiration in different places, and I think that's a big thing a lot of artists miss these days. When you draw comic books, everybody wants to draw the superheroes, and that's all I ever wanted to do when I was growing up, and even when I was in the military, that's what I patterned my life after. But you realize once you have to do it for a living, and you're following someone else's story, or wherever you have to know how to draw cars and buildings and lamp posts and fire hydrants and everything else to go with it. You're not just drawing, big fists crashing into faces.
Yeah. So
as we so often like.
Yeah, and we do like to see those. So I know, and it sounds like if I'm kind of hearing you correctly, because one of the things I see with writers a lot of time is that they write something and and they revise it and 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 revise it. And 10 years later, they're revising the same thing. And
there's really nothing wrong with revision. I mean,
no. That's not
revise over and over too. But
No.
you have to, like I said, you have to.
That's not what I'm saying.
You have to get past these things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my thing was that's all they do. They don't do anything new beyond having done that. They have the one thing that they do, and then they just spend all of their time on that revising. So you talk to someone and at a writers conference, and then 3 years later they're on the 15th draft of the same novel, but they haven't written anything new.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, no, I think revision is necessary. So don't mishear me saying that I don't think you should revise. I think,
and I'm not trying to contradict you either. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I just think what I see in writing, I just see is like they don't ever produce anything new. They take the one thing. And so, are you kind of saying that this is kind of a problem with artists as well, that they spend too much time on the one thing and they ought to work to get faster?
Well, mostly it's the young artists, and they'll they have their favorite thing they like to draw, and I won't name names like you said, but
yeah,
there were some professional artists that I saw early in their career where they couldn't draw feet, and all their hands were balled into fists.
Yeah,
and it's like you have to learn the construction of the hand.
Yeah,
you have to be able to draw expression changing. And actually, I think I heard everything second or third hand, but I think it was Joe Kubert said that the hand is almost more important than the face. The hand shows just as much expression as the face most of the time.
Yeah.
And so these things are important. And a lot of people ignore this stuff for the wide-eyed close-up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest problem with young people starting out is they don't evolve fast enough.
Yeah.
And it's their own fault. I mean, they have to push themselves in different directions.
Yeah.
I always had many influences. While I was drawing comic books, I was being wowed by Frank Frazetta paperback covers and trying to learn how to paint. It's all that stuff combined that even though I wasn't much of a painter back then, that brought something to my line drawing.
Yeah.
The shadow and the half tones and.
So what you do a lot today is you do a lot of the Western style painting, and of course I've called you Frederick Remington before, which not a lot of people know who that is. You do, I know.
And I'm not going to dispute you because I know he would bow down to me if he had the chance today.
That's right.
What a piker he was.
But my question is, so were you influenced by that kind of work back then, or is this something new that has come in your timeline as an artist?
Well, I actually, my mom. I keep bringing up my mom. She was the greatest driving force in my life as far as becoming an artist and a writer and in music and all the arts. And she always kind of, she's the one that I wasn't much of a reader in school. I was reading comic books and that was it. And she's the one that came in and she threw her Howard Brown copy of Dracula onto the bed and said, "You have to read this." and I read it, and then she handed me her collection of Arthur Conan Doyle.
Wow.
And I carried it around a lot, picked a story here and there, but then I became a Doyle fanatic. And Sherlock Holmes was my guy for many years. And, the movies, the books, everything. And so she knew how to tweak the right notes in me. Like I said, she bought me the John Nagy Learn to Draw set when she saw that I was trying to copy pictures out of comic books. And then, with the actual reading thing, and then the music. She always had music in the house. She was always buying. She would go to the movies with my dad or a friend or something, and then she would come home with the soundtrack album.
Wow!
And she would be playing it, and I would be looking at these cool album covers by artists like Howard Turpning and Frank McCarthy, the old illustrators. But I would be looking at these cool album covers, trying to figure out how they made those album covers so cool while I'm listening to How the West Was Won and all these other the great movies. So she just gave me all that and kind of nudged me. She didn't push, but she kind of nudged me when she saw I had an interest in anything. She would steer me one way or another and say, check this out. And so when I can just go on tangents forever like I did last time, or I can do a question.
well, Royal Airships has a question. He says, what branch were you in?
I was in the Air Force for 4 years.
In the Air Force for 4 years.
When I got out, I did put a year in at the American Academy of Art downtown Chicago, and I worked that whole summer on a beer truck to pay for that tuition for the year, and I couldn't imagine going back to work for another summer on a beer truck in Chicago, and so I joined the military. Well, I had a fairly low draft number. I don't even remember what it was, but it was Vietnam was going on, and I couldn't imagine sitting in a ditch with a bunch of soldiers in Vietnam. So I joined the Air Force, and they made me a cop. And in Vietnam, cops sat in ditches over there. So fortunately, I didn't have to go to Vietnam. I was in combat training, and the tech sergeant came by and he said, "Nixon's bringing everybody home. You're not going." And I was like 3 weeks from going over. So I almost literally dodged a bullet there.
Yeah. I think I've told you before. My uncle was an MP.
Yeah,
I had two uncles serve in Vietnam. One was an MP, and the other was a medic.
Yeah.
So,
well, I was a law enforcement specialist, and fortunately, I got to do that for most of my time there.
Yeah,
the 4 years.
Yeah. So here's a good question for you then, or Pete, did you have another one? I could ask questions all night long.
You go ask your question.
So one of the things that when we look at some of the artists that we tend to hold up, like even your generation artists, we tend to hold up the guys like Simon and Kirby and these guys. They all many of them had war experience, right? And so they had that war experience and bring that home, and that kind of informed the artwork they did. Do you think that your time in the military informed your art at all, and in what way?
Well, I really can't say that it did much, except that when I draw guns, I try to get the guns right, and I try to do the hardware right. Although I have been known to get it wrong in the past, but I'm working too fast and not getting the reference. But no, I can't say the thing that. Well, the only thing artistically I think that I really got out of the military was when I was off duty. I spent all my time working on, I think I mentioned before, my 90-page comic book that when I got out of the service, I took around to New York City.
Right.
And got turned down at every door.
That's Beowulf, right?
What's that?
What was that, Beowulf?
No. I was already working for a number of years when I did Beowulf.
Okay.
This was a comic book that nobody wanted to look at because it was very crude. In my mind, it was brilliant. I got 90-some pages. Everybody's going. But no.
Yeah, right. 90 pages done. It has to be brilliant.
Yeah. Well, I drew on it for 4 friggin' years.
Speaking of Roberta or Haley, either one of y'all want to stream art?
Sure.
Let's look at some art while we're talking here.
I just started laying out the base colors on the cover.
Oh yeah, okay. Wait, which cover?
What cover?
The
I haven't done one, so it's not mine.
Champion Miss Fury cover. I'll let that out. Or is that not right?
Well,
I just opened it.
Yeah, I think maybe not, because it has a character on the cover that's supposed to be a surprise.
Oh, so let's not.
Obviously, we're not going to be able to promote the character without giving that away, but let's hold on to that just a little bit longer.
That sounds good.
Don't tell Peter you're doing half the issue as a guy in a shadowed room at night.
Oh yeah.
Wouldn't that be brilliant?
Wouldn't that be fun?
Just turn in black pages. There you go.
No. So this was
Noir man. Yeah.
So this was this is an email I
You
got
are
from
correct.
Pete last
That would
week,
be
right?
too
So
much.
one of the commission requests for the Kickstarter was the Invisible Woman. Pete sent me a blank piece of paper, and he goes, "Here it is."
Done.
I'm like,
Thank you for
that's
your money.
funny.
yeah.
That's Jerry,
funny.
Jerry painting a polar bear in a snowstorm. You know, you
That's
can't beat it.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I'm like,
Awesome. That is really funny.
and of course, I think the request was that she be in a specific costume.
She has
and
to be in her sexy outfit.
Okay, yeah. And Pete said, of course, the brilliant says you can't tell which costume she has on, right?
She's wearing her sexy outfit for you.
So yeah, John Byrne did that with in Alpha Flight, right? He did Snowbird, the character Snowbird, in a blizzard, and it was just the all white issue. Yeah, that's kind of funny. Okay, so
I'll share in a minute.
okay, all right, yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. Here we go. Amy, good, has a question for you. Amy, I was just on. I think it was recorded. I don't think it was live. Or was it live? Amy, you tell me. I don't remember. With at the All Good Show with Amy and Doc, and I had a blast talking to them. And I'm hoping that they will invite me back because they asked me all kinds of fun comic book questions. She said, I'd like to ask the panel of a cool homage cover y'all would like to see. What about a vinyl record cover homage? She said it was live. Okay, well, excellent. Yeah, so thank you. I had a blast, Amy. Thank you so very much. It was a lot of fun. So so homage covers. So here's I'm gonna set you guys up. I know that fans often like homage covers. We often will say, "Hey, this is my favorite cover by George Perez. Can you take it, put my characters, on there and do the same cover as George Perez?" Fans like that, right? As an artist, do you like that? Do you like doing that?
Me, I
Let's
don't.
ask Jerry first.
Yeah, Jerry first.
Well, in my mind, if I do an homage to something, it has to be a universally recognized something. I can do an homage to Norman Rockwell. I can do an homage to Frederick Remington, or I can do an homage to. Well, I wouldn't do an homage to comic book artists just because I'm too close to it. But
so you would not homage, say, a Fantastic Four #1?
No, and as people ask me all the time if I will do reproductions, and I won't do.
Yeah.
I won't do reproduction. Reproduction of my own work or anybody else's.
Yeah, that's homage covers. I understand because I'm still fan enough to understand those.
Yeah.
I don't understand the reproductions. I don't quite get those. And
Well,
I know,
for me, just being on the creative side, I don't ever like repeating myself.
yeah,
I mean, even now, if I do a painting tonight, I will purposely not make it look like a painting. No matter how successful I had in the past, I will not do a painting to replicate that. Just because I have to create. I have to, my mind has to be working along, story and art and all those other things, and just copying or doing something close to another work. It bores me, to be honest, as an artist. So,
what about you, Pete? Homage covers.
Well, look. So, what do it's recreations, but with different characters,
right?
Right. So in place of, let me show you this. Can I share this? I don't know if I can show you this.
Yeah.
Because my screen share doesn't work on this StreamYard nonsense.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I can't even send it to you because it's on my computer. Oh, this is annoying. Can I share? I can't share.
You need to talk to our tech wizard Tommy and get your sharing fixed. He can figure it out.
No, it won't let me share. Would it? No. Anyway, so I do recreations. I have one client in particular who, he's coming up with new All-Star Squadron covers. So he will take he'll send me a cover. It's like an X-Men number 60 or something, and so
Right.
will you replace these characters with the All-Star Squadron
Gotcha.
characters? And
Yeah.
he's got loads and loads of these, and I think he's actually stuff starting to appear in is it Alter Ego?
Oh yeah.
Roy Thomas.
So yeah, as this guy's continuing making covers, and this is what he's doing. He's got so many of them, but yeah. So they're not homage covers.
They kind of are though, right?
Yeah,
Because you're replicating the original design, just using different characters.
it's like I'm using a
His
layout.
characters.
So I'm using a Jack Kirby layout or
Right.
whatever it might be, but replacing the character. I wish I could share these with you because they are quite cool.
Yeah, and that's an homage cover. Yeah, and I like those. I get that. Like for you as the artist, you're like, okay, well, I'm not having to design it. And
I don't mind. I have no problem with anybody and other artists doing that. I mean, look how many people have revisited that first Jack Kirby Fantastic Four #1.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's just something that I have no interest in. You know, it's just,
as an artist that you're not interested in. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I know, Stephen Butler, not last year, but I think the year before last, he did a bunch of homage covers for us. And when I asked him about it, he told me when I was talking to him about, doing some covers, he said, if they're homage covers, I'll do them for you and for this much money. And I said, so why, if they're homage covers? He goes, because I don't have to think. He said, the homage cover, you're just telling me, draw what he drew, but put these characters in the place of it. He goes, I don't have to think. He goes, so the art is pretty quick for me. He goes, if you're wanting me to come up with a brand new cover, he goes, I got to think and design and try to, make everything work.
Yeah.
He said, oh, yeah, Pete. No, that's Roberta. Sorry. I saw it pop
I
up.
think on Messenger. So you got one example there. I've got
Okay. Let me
find one that's quite famous.
Let me pull it up here.
you can't imagine how many people have asked me to draw panels from that Son of a Demon book. I mean,
Really?
I have done quick on occasion something that looks similar, but I understand why the fans want it.
Yeah.
But I just it takes up valuable time out of my day.
Right.
It's something I have to do quickly. I don't know. Like I said, that's just me.
Yeah. Let me see here. Let me share screen. Window. Where is it? Right here. All right. Here's what Pete sent me. Oh, let me see if I can scroll in here.
So I have to do everything basically. I have to fully recreate it with the logo and everything. And even so far as he has specific numbers he wants in the corner, issue number.
And this is from you say Fantastic Four number 60?
No, I'm trying to think what one that was now. There's another. I sent you another one, which I can remember. It was a Thunderbolts cover actually. I remember that.
Oh,
it was a recent issue. Well, I say recent. It's a modern. Got the other one.
Let's see here. Hold on. I'm trying to get over there. There it is.
And that was from a Thunderbolt. From a Thunderbolts.
Yeah. Now, see, I would call that an homage cover because you're taking the original and you're homaging the image, but you're changing.
It's changing the characters.
Yeah, the characters. Yeah. Where a recreation, and I've seen a lot of these. A recreation is that you're just drawing the exact same thing.
I'm not sure I would want to do a recreation of someone else's.
I've seen them where the inker is trying to copy line for line, stroke for stroke, to try to replicate another work of art. And
Yeah. Amy said, I'm an illustrator and I've been doing homage variants, and personally, though not super creative, I feel I have learned quite a bit doing them, about comics that is, which I am new to. I think doing something like that is a great way when you are new. It's a great way to learn.
Of course. I mean, people go to the Louvre to copy paintings hanging in the Louvre. So great learning tool, of course.
Yeah. I think so. All right, so Roberta and Haley, do either of y'all have any questions for you want to ask Jerry about maybe drawing, coloring, curmudgeoning?
all of that.
I can do that.
Sorry, I threw that one in there.
Thank you.
But you've been doing an awful lot of fine art for quite a while. And I guess it gives you quite a bit of freedom of, subject matter and what you want to draw. And I was wondering, are you branching out past what you've been putting out there lately with the Southwest art?
I'm always in my mind. I'm always
What's
testing
next?
other,
I guess is
testing
what
other
I'm asking.
directions.
Mhm.
Right now, I do the Western art, historical art. I call it historical art because I'm living in the East now, and so Southwest is kind of I like that genre, but I also like the 18th century New England, and I like there's all kinds of stuff all over.
Arkansas is not exactly the East.
What's that?
Arkansas is not exactly the East.
Oh, Southeast. Okay, fine. I just spent
Come on
30
now,
years.
That's a little bit insulting.
I just spent over 30 years in California. This is East.
Okay, yeah, it's absolutely east of California.
Thank you.
East of California, yes.
I'm going to have to Google it now because I don't know where any of that is. I know it California.
Yeah,
It's not as far east as England.
yeah.
Yeah.
Arkansas is right about the middle,
No, come on.
but a little,
Arkansas.
huh?
Texas.
Oh,
Yeah, Arkansas, yeah. It's Arkansas, but yeah, it's just below
It
Missouri.
says Arkansas on my phone.
Yeah, well, it's pronounced
Mhm.
Arkansas, so
It says Southern US.
yes, it is in the South. But as Jerry says, it's east of California, which is
It's near
oh my
Mississippi.
gosh.
It's on the Mississippi
is
River,
true.
so that's pretty
no
nice.
one other than Jerry would consider Arkansas to be east.
That's funny.
Well, I'm not
Arkansas
gonna
is
argue.
on the west side of the Mississippi River, even.
Yeah, but that was only considered part of the New World for a very short period of time.
Yes.
Oh, it's definitely east.
Yeah.
What? No, it's
Speaking
not.
of someone who
Oh
doesn't
my
know a great deal
goodness.
about the United States
Okay.
geography, that's definitely on the east
I
side.
know my geography, Roland. Come on. It's
not
southeast. Yes.
All right, I'll take southeast.
Yeah.
Jerry,
You say
Amy,
Florida is south or east?
uh-huh.
Uh-huh. I said or. You say Florida is
Florida.
south or east?
Yeah, Florida is southeast, yes. It's as southeast as you can go in the U.S.
Well, okay. Well, point made.
But I'm 16 hours from Arkansas.
Yeah, up. It's not east. 16 hours.
I have to drive west to Arkansas.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'm not going to argue geography with you. I know my
I am
maps in my
down. I
head.
am down further. Now I'm not in the westest part of Florida. I'm way down in Florida. So
I've lived in 9 different states in my lifetime. I kind of know my geography by now.
Yeah, I've lived in not quite that many, but a bunch of them.
Uh-huh.
Amy says, I would ask Jerry his favorite traditional medium, subject matter, and style, impressionist, etc., and how frequently everyone does traditional painting.
Well, for me, it's oils. That's the one. There's a lot of pluses to working in oils. It's one that you can charge the highest prices for in a gallery, but it's also, in my mind, the most forgiving medium. You can always paint over something if you kind of get a brush stroke you don't like. You can sand it off when it dries. You can repaint over it, or you can just, so oils to me, and
Okay.
And Roberta,
I like a bit of oil. I think it blends smoother than
right.
any other ones.
There's a lot of things with oils that there's a lot of things with oils that beginning painters don't quite get, as far as making sure you know how to blend the consistency of an oil, which mediums to use with the oil paints in order to get that buttery paint to come off your brush or knife. And there are tricks to it, but all in all, it's probably the easiest medium. Watercolors, I love working with watercolors, but it's unforgiving. You cannot paint several washes of watercolor and have it look like anything halfway decent. You got to know what you're putting down, the colors you're putting down, and you can tint it a little bit with washovers. But like I said, it's an unforgiving medium.
So as one who does an art, can you mix those two? And what are the pros and cons of doing that?
Watercolor and oil?
Yeah.
It's not something.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
One is transparent, one is completely opaque. So
Okay.
yeah.
You can do
Yeah,
acrylic.
it's kind of like a
Acrylic
build
one.
up versus a, like you go from with blacks to white
Yeah.
or white to black. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
you have
Well,
like a watercolor, whatever you put down, it ruins the white. So you have to spare the white.
Watercolor, you always have to go light to dark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas in oils, it's best to put on your lights later because they say the lighter pigment you use, the thicker it should go on. Whereas your darker colors are put on thinner so that you can add your lights on top of it. So there are a lot of rules that come along with each medium, but I break the rules all the time, so I don't.
Yeah. But you have to know what the rules are to break them, right?
I also like pastels. I studied pastels with one of the best pastel artists in the country, Harley Brown, and I lived in Tucson for a couple of years, and I was able to get together with him and learn pastels. I took his workshops, Scottsdale Art School, a couple of those, and got to be kind of friends for a short time. And we would get together and paint models over at the high school or the college gym or whatever it was. And,
Cool.
But the pastels, I love pastels, but they're messy.
Yeah.
They're fun to work with, but the dust comes off of them so much that I'd done some pastel work for just after I had spent all this time working with pastels. In order to impress one of the directors I was working on, I had a little bedroom and I did some of my artwork in pastels and took them in. But I would wake up in the morning with colored dust in my nose from breathing. It was kind of miserable, and you can't vacuum it up because it just gets everywhere.
So when you sneeze, blues and purples are coming out, right?
It's not pretty, but it is fun, a fun medium to work in.
Yeah. Now, Haley and Roberta, do y'all do any of the traditional stuff as well? And if so, what about you? What are your favorites?
Well, I started out doing acrylic as I think what moved me the most. And it's a little flat for some people. I think I like the cleanness of it, and I like the build-up quality to it. And I liked that I could paint in a small space without air. The fumes weren't there.
Lock you in your bedroom.
Yeah, so like it was very portable, but I like the qualities of it, and I like that it pushed me to be fast because it was not forgiving on the level that acrylic starts drying and you try to make a blend and you better be quick about it.
Yeah, I liked acrylics. I actually never painted in acrylics until I went to Disney, and because of course you can't work on anything that's going to stay wet for a while, and I watched one of their artists in there working in acrylics, and I kind of learned from him, and I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. But acrylics kind of dictates its own style because it dries so fast. So yeah, I just got used to using flat brushes all the time and making one or two passes and then just moving on. But it's fun.
Yeah. Here's a great comment from Royal Airships, and you're only in Florida. Do you understand this one? He says the more north you go in Florida, isn't it right? The more north you go in Florida, the further south you are.
There you go.
Yeah, because like Florida, I mean, you think of like Georgia, you're like, yeah, that's the south, but Florida is like not as much the South, but it is actually more South. Like,
yeah, it's funny. The further north you go in Florida, the more south it is, right?
Yeah, well, when I was in the military, I was in Florida for 2 years, and a lot of guys I worked with and lived with in the barracks, they were from Florida, but they didn't sound Floridian. they were from the swamps. A lot of them were from the outback in Florida, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amy says, yep, using oils and varnish, they are buttery.
Mm-hmm.
And then Royal said, I did an acrylic of a ship at sea. It's the only painting I thought turned out reasonably well. That's kind of cool.
Okay.
Let's see. What about you, Haley? Any traditional?
Yeah, I'm like trying to think, when was the last time I like painted anything? I mean, I did an oil painting class in college, so that was a while ago, and that's hard. Like, I mean, doing like still lifes and stuff and trying to mix the exact color that you need. Like, I remember we did this one pretty big still life. It was like 2 feet by 3 feet or so a bit. It was big. And it was just like a bunch of toys and stuff. And there was like this plastic, like beach shovel or something that was like this bright pink. And I could not figure out how to like make that color. It's like, wow. Yeah. When you're doing digitally, you can just like eyedropper.
Yeah.
And then especially if you, with the big painting, like I wouldn't, we worked on it for several class periods. So I'd like, put all my paint away and then next time have to like try to mix the same colors.
Oh yeah, I bet that's tough.
Yeah, but it was fun. It was fun though. But
the other problem is a dry looking color is so different in acrylic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Once it dries and you're like trying to remake it, it's totally a different shade.
I can see that. Jerry, do you do anything digital at all?
I used to. I don't anymore.
Yeah.
I'll spend a lot of time assembling a painting digitally. Just I'll take a dozen photographs and I'll crop and I'll move them around the canvas image on my computer screen. But I won't. There's no call for me to do any artwork digitally at this point.
Mm-hmm.
When I I was at Digital Domain, and that's when I was working in acrylics. I left Disney and I went over there to work, and I could see around me other artists that would come in there and they'd start getting the work because they were doing all the painting digitally. So I went out of work for a year because nobody wanted to hire a traditional painter in Hollywood, because it's so easy for an art director or director to walk up behind an artist and say, to a red painting, say, no, I want it cool, I want it blue. And within the space of half an hour, they can turn a red painting blue. If you're working in traditional paints, you can't do that.
Right. Yeah.
But I wound up being out of work for almost a year. And that's when I decided a Cintiq was going to cost me about $2,500 back then, a large Cintiq. And I said, what am I going to do? I'm not going to get work until I learn how to work on these things.
Yeah.
I couldn't work on a Wacom tablet because the hand-eye disconnect. So I had to have something I could actually work on the screen. And then I taught myself Painter because the brushes at the time were better than the Photoshop brushes.
They were really cool.
I could actually ink something with the Painter, with the Painter pen points and things like that. So, so I did have to teach myself digital.
Yeah. Well, with the mention of inks, then now let's talk about inks now. Let's shift back to comics a little bit. Let's talk about inks. So, I know that you've seen enough digital stuff to know, inking is changing a little bit in the industry as well, because a lot of people are shifting to the digital. What do you think? Let's just ask you the same question. What do you think are some of the biggest issues? I think Pete asked a pencil question. What do you think are some of the biggest issues that you see in today's inking that they should improve upon? Again, no names, just in general. what are you seeing that, oh, I see a lot of today's inkers do this?
Well, I'm kind of, I don't want to say I don't like what most inkers are doing today, but I kind of want to say that because
That's fine.
It's so antithetical to my idea of it's all about the black and white artwork and coloring. I painted my own work. I've colored my own work, but in my mind, I come from the traditional comics where it's about the black and white work. And at some point, I had an editor actually tell me, he said, well, you don't have to fill in all these blacks because we're doing all this great digital coloring now to make the shadows and everything. And
Right.
to me, when the page left my desktop, it did not feel finished.
Yeah, now you're talking about inks and not pencils, right?
Well, I'm talking about inks. The inks, the blacks aren't there, and when they are, they're not part of the design. They feel a lot of times the blacks feel like they're laid down to make form or reflection or whatever, but they're not a part of the design of the entire drawing.
Yeah.
And I come from that era where I remember when I was first looking for work and I sat down with Marie Severin, the art director at Marvel, and she's telling me what I'm doing wrong. And she pulls out the large Xerox of Ross Andrews Spider-Man page, and she explained to me, whatever you think of Ross Andrews' work, she explained to me how Ross had a technique where he would sit down and he would design the page first, the entire page. He wouldn't just draw panel to panel. He would design the page, and sometimes in order to design it, he would start out by making a big Z or a big S on the page that covers the whole page. And each panel, the way the panels lay out, you could see conforms to whatever that shape was. Sometimes it was an X, sometimes it was a cross, sometimes it was whatever. But it gives something that your eye subconsciously sees as a full page design. And then you design each individual panels after that. But and so the blacks at the time, they were all part of that design.
Yeah.
And I look at, I'm not, of course, like last time, I generalize a lot because I'm talking about the things that I don't care much about.
Sure.
The type of art I don't much care about.
Yeah.
And to me, there has to be some sort of design it's a black and white medium first to me.
Right.
And so if the black and whites don't work, the colors don't work for me. So
and Roberta and Haley, that doesn't mean he doesn't like colorist. He just
he just said it is totally irrelevant.
I come on here in order to this is the only reason for me to leave the house.
No,
I'm gonna make Roberta cry by the end of the night. You watch.
So, but I am a little like you in that I'm a huge fan of black and white artwork. Now, of course, if I'm reading a comic book, I like to see it in color, but I'm a huge fan of looking at black and white artwork. And when I have an inked page that looks like a coloring book, to me, that's a problem. Yeah. I want to have the image. Of course, I'm a fan of words on the pages too, as if Amy's still listening, we talked about in the last hour. But the art needs to make my eyes move, and I think blacks, chunks and spots, I don't know any other way to call them, chunks and spots of blacks help move your eye on the page like that.
Well, then that's another thing that artists learn as they progress. It's sometimes the composition is more important than any individual drawing, whether it's a composition of the page or composition of the panel, or just how the figures are laid out in order to tell a story. The composition goes along with storytelling as far as in level of importance.
Well, let me ask you this. So because they're kind of, as I see them, as someone who doesn't draw, as I see them, they're kind of two thoughts here, right? There's the actual, I'm going to draw this page and have it tell a story, and I'm going to draw this page and make it look pretty. Right? In my mind, those are kind of two different things. Would you agree with that, or no?
Well, yeah,
Okay.
I'm not about drawing pretty pictures if it doesn't tell a story or if it doesn't move the eye the way you want it to move or whatever.
Yeah.
Pretty, making something pretty for being pretty itself does nothing for me.
Right.
And then this is why I'm attracted to artists like present day artists still working like Lee Weeks. I think this guy's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, he took what was what I was trying to do. I was looking at. I think he's evolved from Buscema-like style into pushed himself towards more and more towards modern work, but still keeping that storytelling and using blacks effectively and creating compositions on a page. And so that's the kind of stuff I like to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, color and colors are extremely important, Roberta.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But great colors on bad line work don't have much.
Well, Roberta, I was just teasing. Roberta already knows that I'm a huge fan of hers. I love
You're
this.
kind to me. Thank you.
So we have another question here, Jerry. This was specifically for you. BJ Man says, so Jerry, when are you going to visit us in Florida?
Oh, BJ, as soon as I can. My sister's in Sarasota. I want to come down and visit her. And but I put off my convention stuff for a while just because, I'm going to get mobbed when I get on you. And my cat, last year I found out my cat's got cancer, and so I'm giving him as much love and energy as I can for a while, not going anywhere until he was, I must be doing something right because he was supposed to be gone by Halloween, and he's still with me.
He's still around.
So, and he's doing okay. I get him shots for. He's got arthritis on top of everything, osteoarthritis like I had, and I take him once a month for his arthritis shots, and that kind of helps his other pains as well. I'm just when it gets too difficult for him, I realize I don't want him to suffer. But right now he doesn't seem to be suffering as long as he eats, and he can act like a real cat sometimes. I got to give him the time. So that's all to say to answer BJ's question. Yes, I will come visit you, but when I can.
Yeah. She tossed in. She said, "Artists need a vacation too, my friend."
Yeah, I'm on permanent vacation. I'm not Aerosmith song.
Yeah, she said, "Bring your fur baby with you."
Well, at his age and his condition, he's not pretty good at traveling. Right?
No, yeah.
When I moved across country with this poor cat in my car, and then I drove back to California with him in the car with me. And
my goodness,
he doesn't love it.
Yeah, I'll bet.
He likes being settled someplace.
Yeah. Jackson here said something that I think that we can all agree with. He says, "Roberta rocks."
Oh, that's nice of you.
So Tommy, who is not here, and so he can't chime in on this. One of the things that he and I talk about inking some, and see if you got to have an opinion one way or the other on this, Jerry, is
I got opinions.
Well, what I kind of feel that digital inking has done to traditional inking is it's made the line. It has made, I think, a lot of artwork look more coloring booky, and I think we don't see the variation of line weight. I see it seems to me a lot of today's inkers are afraid of a fat line. And I don't mean PHAT. I don't mean a cool hip fat line. I mean a big, thick, fat line. And it seems like they're afraid of them. And where if you look at comics from the 60s and 70s and in the 80s, they weren't afraid to lay down a thick line. But I don't see a lot of that today.
I think a lot of that has to do with all contemporary or most contemporary comic book art now. Even stuff that's inked traditionally. A lot of small thin lines used for shadowing, and the blacks are slapped in for to create solidity, I guess. But that thin, thick line that you're talking about, when I was trying to teach myself that Cintiq, it was a pressure sensitive pen, which is the reason I liked working in Painter, because they had pen tips in the Painter program that you could use that pressure sensitivity from on the stylus, and create that thick to thin line. But
Yeah.
it's something that takes work to actually
Yeah.
achieve, to get practice at it, to get good at it. So
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of inkers nowadays. Most of them just don't want to put in that kind of time to. Back when I was starting out, Dan Atkins is trying to teach me how to use the quill. I couldn't get anything right. I was splattering ink on the page, and I was putting up and tips, and it took a long time to develop an ink style. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. And a lot of times now, a lot of the problems I see with some inkers, not all, of course,
Yeah.
but they don't quite get the good traditional artists. I'm not even bringing myself into the picture, but the best traditional artists that I've studied over the years, the European artists or whatever, they knew how to. I don't know. I don't want to critique anybody. It's not my thing. It's not my thing. But, they understood the value of learning how to form shapes just by virtue of the line weight.
Mm-hmm.
And the border line around a figure, you will see it change shape going from the shadow side to the light side, or if there's a highlight on something, and then you'll see a lot of people, even back when I was learning, and I was getting it wrong a lot in the beginning, and I think I improved a little bit over time, but the cross hatching does not look like a basket weave. And cross hatching, so actually, I don't know if it was Atkins or somebody told me, you don't use perpendicular lines for cross hatching. You use lines, your first set of lines go down to help create the form from dark to light. And then what you do for cross hatching is that cross hatch line has to also be following form. It can't just be flattening out the image.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you want a flat image. A lot of times, for instance, you have a window pane and you want to throw lines on there. You're not going to use curved lines because it'll make the window pane look curved.
Right.
You use lines to make it look flat. And I would do that, say, with Iron Man. If I'm not creating a curve, if I want to flatten something out, I will use lines to make it look flat. But there's a lot of, I could go on with lessons here all night. But just to say that,
We're
I
all
think
ears anytime.
Yeah.
That's right.
I just think that we used to put different emphasis on getting those little details right, as opposed to just a lot. I see a lot of inkers, and it says nothing to do with anybody on the screen right now.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of inking in comics now. It looks like they're trying to ink like other comic book artists, as opposed to discovering the form with your ink work.
Yeah.
And like Dan Atkins, I keep saying Dan because he's the guy who basically the first guy that took me in and taught me what I was doing wrong. And he would, even though he billed himself as an inker, he knew how to draw. And he would I would be in the studio and he would turn over to the back of the page and he would draw a figure for me and he would show me why he put those lines down where they needed to go. And that's an art that I think has been lost or ignored by a lot of people nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, one of the things that, of course, I like to look at a lot of the 60s comics, I guess, and Jack Kirby immediately comes to my mind, and I to be honest with you, I don't know who his inker was at the time.
Well, he had a lot of inkers. It's from Vinnie Coletta, which nobody liked too.
Yeah. I don't know that he's the one I'm thinking of then. But I can conjure in my mind's eye several images, where you've got Jack Kirby and these lines around this hand up here are so thick, they're just so thick that they're huge, thick lines. And then, the midground, and then the background, they're tiny, skinny little line. And just looking at the black and white, you're like, oh, look, that's clearly there's so much depth in that those lines create. And I just don't know that we have very many inkers doing that today.
Right. And a lot of that, and I know editors today who have said it to me and will say, and probably say it to their artists now that, that's old fashioned art. This is not what we're interested in seeing. This is, so sadly, that old fashioned art was right a lot of the time. It's been kicked to the curb, but that's Kirby was a master for a lot of reasons. But that whole thing you're talking about, where when those lines thick to thin, I mean, that's his shorthand. That's shorthand for foreshadowing. The shorthand for light. The shorthand for a lot of things. For a curve. It's for a lot of things, and it's one of those things that it was so automatic for him, as the years went on, that it just seemed to roll off his pencil, and but it was all based on knowledge. Whatever, as rough as his breakdowns could be, they all came from a knowledge base.
And I think it worked. I think it worked so good to build that depth in an image.
Well, it's like action. Kirby, nobody did action like Kirby. His characters just flew off the page. And it had to do with the pose, even as extreme as the pose was, that these figures were in positions that a body could never get into.
Right.
But it came, and the inking as well. Everything had a purpose. It was his way of, and he was so fast. I mean, what was he doing? Like eight pages a day or something at some point? I forget what they say. But he developed all these techniques over time where it would roll off his pencil.
Yeah. All right. So you guys got any other questions?
Okay. Bye.
Yeah, I can ask a question.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
So you do like penciling and inking. Do you prefer to do both, or do you like it when you like inking over someone else's pencils, or vice versa?
Well, Roland knows the answer.
Do you prefer like when it's all you?
I can answer that one.
Well, I just when I was starting out, my artwork was rather crude, and I got handed off to a number of inkers who were not the most accomplished inkers. And so once I started inking myself, the more I did it, the less I wanted anybody else to ink my work, because no matter who the inker is or how good he is, Tom Palmer, one of the best inkers in the business, if not the best, actually inked one of my stories, and it was just a thrill to see him inking my story. Although, when I looked at it, I'm thinking, but I didn't draw it like this. Well, he probably improved on it quite a bit. But when but that's why I started just inking myself as much as possible, and after a while, I didn't even want anybody else to ink my work. Although I did go off and ink a couple other artists on quick jobs. It was basically for the work, or just because I inked a Spider-Man annual by Sal Buscema.
Oh,
and
wow.
Just because I grew up with Sal Buscema, it was a joy just to work on, those quirky characters that he drew. He drew. So, but for the most part, I like to do it. And well, I've been out of comic books for quite a while now, so I can't really critique anybody now.
Okay, other questions? Pete, got any other questions?
Have you seen my French curve? I can't seem to locate it.
I loan you mine, but I don't think it fit through the.
I'm trying to draw a car, and I haven't got a French curve, and it's rather tricky.
It's probably next to your electric eraser.
Yeah.
I actually have two French curves. It used to be one French curve. And then I asked my wife, could you pass me my French curve, please? And as she did that, she just snap it in half. So now I have two French curves. Both of which are missing.
Pete, you're frozen here. Let me see.
Eventually, you'll learn to get more than one of everything.
Yeah, your image. I can hear you just fine, Pete, but your image is frozen.
Oh, that's probably my internet, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I will Can we log out and try log back in again?
Okay. All right.
All right. Let's see if
Uh,
the computer won't work at all. So.
So if you guys don't have any other questions, I'll ask the next one. So going once, going twice. All right, Jerry, let's move on to story now. All right. So one of the things I know about you is I know that you also do a lot of writing. Again, we don't like to talk negative names here, but if you're looking at comics of today,
which I haven't looked at too many of them lately. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so the most recent comics that you can remember, what would you say has been the biggest issue in the stories that you see? And if you were to give like kind of one sort of blanket statement to all the comic book writers today, what would that be? What would you say?
Oh God.
What?
I said, oh God.
Yeah.
Well, there are some excellent writers, and there are a lot of writers who are not so excellent. Because I've seen the evolution of comics.
Yes.
And I don't believe the evolution has improved that much on comics. I had problems back in the 90s when I was finishing up my tour of duty with the way comics were evolving, and I think a lot of it started changing quite a while ago when all of a sudden a comic book was not self-contained. And anybody could drag a story out for as many issues as they could convince an editor they could go to. And a lot of problems I see where I can see problems with an artist's storytelling ability. I think a lot of writers nowadays do not have that ability to create pages with individual impact as well as cohesive, an entire book that sits alone. Even though it may be a continuing story, you have to, in my mind, you have to wrap something up by the end of a comic book, a physical comic book, and it doesn't have to wrap up the whole story, but wrap up a character line, wrap up a confrontation line or something, so that people do not have to buy 6 or 7 comic books just to finish a story.
Right.
Well, that's to me, and this started, like I said, it started back in the late 80s, early 90s when nothing was, you almost never saw an individual story in a comic book.
Yeah. Well, I remember even in late 70s, probably a lot of the Englehart Avengers.
Yeah.
Were multiple part stories.
Yeah. And I, like you said, you're one of the few people who knows I've done any writing. When, in actual fact, I started studying writing in high school, and I've written almost as much as I've drawn over the years, even though I haven't published very much. I think I published my first short story back in the mid 90s. But I've worked at novels. I've got a whole hard drive full of folders with finished novels that probably never go anywhere. But to me, if I see a problem with some of my work, I'll move on, like I do with my artwork, and try to improve and carry the craft forward. Yeah. But I was almost exclusively I wanted to write a novel. So I spent decades writing novels, and that went nowhere. And I tried my hand at screenplays. I tried my hand at everything. But when I actually sat down and consciously decided to write short stories, I learned how to use time. I learned how to use a fast story arc, how to actually, even if I have a series of short stories and they're connected by the character or whatever, I know that I have X amount of words that I am limited to. And okay, there's a short story, or there's a novella, and there's a novelette, and you have to change your plot in order to accommodate each one of those.
Right.
And in my mind, a lot of present day comic book writers, they're in one form here, and they've been doing the same thing for so long. I don't know that any of them could change the way they structure a plot.
Yeah.
I say any one of those. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Any one of the writers that I think are not as up to par as better writers. So
yeah. Well, so I'm going to ask you a very targeted question. If you don't want to answer this one, you don't have to, because it's okay. And so the Silverline model is, we will tell so we're telling miniseries with an eye towards the trade / graphic novel, if that's what you want to call it. So
that's I think what most of the companies are doing.
Yeah. I think Marvel and DC kind of. I haven't read Marvel and DC in years, so, but I kind of get the idea that that's kind of what they do as well. So working kind of within that parameter, what would you tell? And I know that you probably haven't read anything that we've done, so you're not commenting specifically on our stories.
I haven't been in a comic shop in probably 10 years.
Well, but if you,
maybe you walked in and out. But.
Yeah. But if you were to tell, all right, Roland, here's what you need to make sure that you're doing with Silverline in these stories, knowing that we've got that our model has gotten either 3 or 4 issues as a miniseries, what would you suggest that we do from the writer / story perspective?
Well,
because clearly a miniseries with an eye towards a graphic novel is a different beast than an extended series.
Right. Well, yeah. Know your finished product before you start writing it. Yeah. So you know how to structure the plot, and make sure, depending on the headliner, the main character, protagonist, make sure you give him more screen time than the lesser characters. So sometimes I see these lesser characters, they actually take on, arcs of their own within some of these books, when I don't think they're worthy. And I'm not talking about Silverline. I'm talking about comic books in the past.
Sure,
I know. So it's trade craft. It's hard to cover it in the space of an hour.
And it's kind of a vague question as well.
Yeah, well, but it's a valid question, and like I said, I can't critique anybody else's writing. I just think that I know what I would do given a certain circumstance.
So in other words, this is not an invitation for anybody to send you their miniseries and have you critique it.
Yet. My ex-wife was Russian, by the way, so that's where that came from.
Yeah.
So, but it's you got to know. Like I may have said last time I was on here, I see too many writers, or even back when I was in comics, back in the 80s and 90s. There were some good writers who could not think visually. And no matter how much I know, I made the comment about one writer who wanted 9 to 10 panels on a page, and I heard Curtis say something to the effect that, well, the writer in him likes that. Yeah, but most comic book readers don't.
Right.
I mean, unless they're specifically
unless it's George Perez.
Well, unless they're specifically writer-driven.
Yeah.
Well, I use David Gibbons' The Watchmen thing as an example. I mean, David Gibbons was brilliant. I loved The Watchmen book when I first saw it. But it's not something I think that a lesser artist could do.
Well, let me ask you a question here. So I see this on the internet, and I mostly stay out of these because most of the times they trash one way or the other. But you talk about the visual thing, and for what it's worth, I absolutely 100% agree with you on that. And I'm even talking about quote unquote name writers. Now, but there would you agree first that there's a difference between, say, the Marvel method of writing and writing a full script?
Well,
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Well, I don't know if Marvel still does it that way, but the Marvel method of writing gave more story control to the artist, and
Is
artists
is that what you work
and most
from?
artists like that. Excuse me.
Is that what you work from when you were at Marvel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's more of a treatment that the writer gave to the artist, and the artist would go and like fill in the action blanks or whatever, and then
Right.
it goes back to the writer. And sometimes, they would redraw stuff, as I said earlier, but in order to, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always wanted to be part of the creative process.
Yeah. So am I hearing you saying that you think that's a good method?
Well, it's the method is only as good as the people involved. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
Well,
But like I said, if you have a writer who can be a brilliant writer, it can be Stephen King, but if he can't think visually on the page, to me, it's not a successful book.
Yeah.
And
Well,
because despite what some writers will tell you, this is a visual medium,
it is. Yeah.
and you can't be writing like Melville and expect to sell a comedy.
Well, so I'm a big fan of the method, and the reason I'm a big fan of the method is because because of that very reason. I think that no matter how good I think I am visually, I think an artist who is trained visually is going to always be better at the visual elements than I can be. So why would I not just say, hey, here's what I want to happen on this page. You make it happen, right? Rather than me trying to say, panel 1, this happens in this panel. Panel 2, this happens in this panel. Because I feel that's somewhat limiting to an artist in the composition of the page and all that kind of stuff. But I see so many people on the internet trash that method. But it's the writer taking it's a writer putting off all the work on the artist, or it's a writer cheating. And I'm like, I don't think so. That's not the way that's not my belief in the method, because again, I've read scripts, full scripts by quote unquote professional writers, and I read them and I'm like, well, that's not very visual. Why don't you remove this and just let the artist design the page? And then you can come back and you can add this dialogue later in places that are appropriate for it.
Well, I also come from the movie world, movie industry, right? So that's one of the things that you learn early on if you're trying to write a screenplay is you don't put everything on the page.
Right.
What you have, and if you try to do that, it won't get read. If you have a long paragraph describing what a room looks like, you're for one, it's going to be turned down immediately as you're not a professional screenwriter then.
Right.
But on the other hand, there are plethora. There are a lot of stories around Hollywood, like Penny Marshall, for instance, where one of her famous movies that she directed. Well, the screenwriter came onto the set and we were watching the filming, and he would go over and he would talk to her, and he would he would actually talk to the actor, and this is what I had in mind. And Penny Marshall said, "You can go home now.
Yeah.
You did your job. You can go home now."
Right.
Yeah, she kicked him off the set. And so, yeah, everybody's got a job, and depending on how good that person is, and Quentin Tarantino can basically write and direct and do anything he wants.
Yeah.
And he's good at
always that kind of people.
Yeah. Most of the time, he's pretty good at it.
Yeah.
But not everybody can do that. I mean, you look at M. Night Shyamalan and how he had a couple big hits, but his writing suffers over time because he couldn't grow far enough from his beginning. So here I'm critiquing multimillionaires. What I got to say, right? But this is my way of saying this is why I think that it depends on the person in the seat. If the writer can think visually enough, let him go to town and create all the details in a scene he wants. But if the artist cannot create part of that scenery, if he's just doing what's on the page, then let him just do what's on the page. But they both have to be able to fill both those seats if they want to do both jobs.
Yeah. Well, I'm a fan. Pete has never really said anything to me. That's the way we do Silverline Team Up, and he's never really said anything. I think it's just because he's a nice guy. He's never really said anything to me one way or the other. So
he's afraid of you, brother.
And the final product looks awesome. So from my perspective, I look at it and like, okay, this is working, right? Except for that, I had too many fire engines in the first scene, apparently.
Okay. Takes 2 seconds to write it, and I'm drawing it for a day and a half.
Isn't it the way? I feel your pain, Pete.
Yeah, and then he puts like way too much detail on something.
I do put too much detail, but I'm sorry, I'm trying to cut back on that nonsense.
Well, and then
but I wanted 9 rungs on this ladder, not 7.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's also the thing that somebody forgot to communicate to Roberta that was snow and not fire.
Oh, I know that.
Please snow, Roberta. My snow looks a lot more snow-like in the next issue. So
I know.
you can't have any issues.
Well, if I'd have just gotten the script to begin with.
I know.
What's good is in the script it didn't say snow at all.
It
was a blank page. Just said, "Do what you like."
It said the weather,
Do what
right?
you like.
Didn't it say
Do
the
what you like.
weather?
Make me look good. Okay.
That works too.
For the record, I want everyone to know Roberta has the script for issue 2 already in her hands, and she had it a long time ago.
Oops. Yeah.
So
Where's that?
I'm
I
glad
have
you
it.
do because I haven't paid any attention to that. So when you come to colour it, it's not going to correspond at all. I've done my own thing. I've decided they're all going to die at the end, and I don't have to do
Oh
a
no,
number
you
issue.
didn't.
Spoiler.
yeah.
Fine, now we don't buy the book.
Well,
The
the
snowstorm comes in really thick in issue 3, and you don't see much.
It's white on white,
Blizzard.
huh?
It's wide out.
Well, the thing I will say, at least Pete reads the script, so we can't say that. Can't say the same thing for Tommy.
He hasn't got a clue what's going on.
Tommy has no
Brad
clue.
has no idea.
Tommy didn't even Tommy prints the books, and he doesn't read them even after they're printed. We can talk about him because he's not here. So, well, all right. Well, my clock says 9:28. It's been a lot of fun, and the time has flown by. Jerry, anything you want to add that you're like, man, I should have said this?
I just want to say everybody should just give up now because it's all good.
So,
No.
one final question for you, Jerry. What
Yeah.
would it take? What would it take for someone to come back to Jerry Bingham and say, "I have a comic book I want you to draw"? What would it take?
More money than
And I'm not talking about a dollar figure. I mean, I know
Truckload
that
of cash.
we know that is there, but
Yeah, I'm.
are you
Yeah.
done?
What's that?
Are you done, or
Yeah, I'm pretty much done. With comics. I right now I'm enjoying. I go to the occasional convention and see the fans, and that's fun. I do sketches and that sort of thing. But actually, over the past 10 years or so, I do have these inspirations where I wanted to go and I've got like maybe a dozen comics started. The first 5 to 10 pages drawn. They're laying in drawers because I just got other stuff to do.
yeah,
And then if I pull myself away from it for 2-3 weeks, it's just hard to pick up again. So
Yeah.
it's like I want to be there in my heart because this is where I grew up.
right.
But it's like anything. It's like I wanted nothing more than to be a Marvel artist, and I got to do it. And within 5 years, I was jaded and had to leave. and then I really didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
And then my whole artistic career has been like that. Yeah, I move forward, and then it's hard for me to go back. It's hard for me to retrace my steps. So,
You
I'm
kind of
always looking down the road.
huh?
What's that?
You got to see the beast from within, right?
Well, yeah, and it's not even just about learning to dislike the environment you're in. It's more like once I've moved forward, I'm always looking forward. And that's just part of who I am. I'm always looking forward. And so when I went to work at Disney, and when I got out of there, I never wanted to work at Disney again. I went into movies, and I was fine until I decided I'd had enough. And so I started the gallery stuff, and now here I am. And who knows? And now I'm working on other things besides that to try to see where I can push myself over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
At my age, 10 years is a big deal. No.
Yeah, it gets to be a bigger and bigger deal the more birthdays you have, right?
Well, exactly. So to go back, right now, I have that mindset that I'm feeling in pretty good health for my age, and so I don't have a problem there. But in my mind, there's a ticking clock. Yeah, and if I want to get involved in this down the road, I can't be going back and doing this former stuff, right? Because I have I have my next goal set up, and then there'll be another goal after that if I make it that far. So,
well, and those mortality becomes very real. I had an uncle who died recently. My dad's the oldest of the brothers. I had an uncle who died, and I got to thinking. I said, I'm only 13 years removed from the age of my uncle. Yeah. Again, my dad's considerably older than him, but it's like, wow, I'm only 13 years from my uncle who just passed away. So
my grandpa Bingham lived to be 99 years old, from what they say. Of course, he probably stretched the truth a little bit, but he was an Irishman after all. But I'm thinking I may have a few years yet.
Now, Pete, that's his ancestor that was an Irishman. Pete's an American. I mean, Jerry's an American now. That makes him okay, right?
Sure. I like the Irish. Everyone likes the Irish.
No, you like their beer.
No, I do like Guinness.
Yeah. By the way, we were royalty. Okay, the Binghams. Come on now. Heard of Lord Lucan?
I know Lord Lucan.
What's that?
I know of Lord Lucan.
Lord, most people do, because one guy he had to run away, disappear because he was a killer or something.
That's right. That's why I know Lord Lucan.
But I was told I'm not related to that guy.
You're right.
I'm
not related to that Lord Lucan.
Actually, I don't know if you
know the good guy, the good one.
I don't know if you know Ireland, Pete. There's actually a place in Ireland called Binghamstown. And that was my great grandfather's. It's up, where the mullet is? It's up on the western shore, up near Northern Ireland. There's a place that's depressed, and because the weather is rotten all year, and it was called the Mullet. And there was actually Bingham's Castle there at one point. The Black and Tans burned it down at the turn of the last century.
Yeah,
that was great granddad. He was the evil landlord. Great.
You go back and reclaim it.
What's that?
You go back and reclaim it.
Yeah, I could.
Yeah, how much trouble would that be?
I don't. It would probably burn me out again.
Just stand in the middle of the street, look around, and go, yeah, I'll take it.
That's right.
I'll have this back.
I'm told I could get dual citizenship, but that would take a lot of work.
That would certainly get you back in the news, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
American invades Ireland.
An American.
Sole American.
One American. Majority American.
And of course, the British will be going, yeah, go.
We've been doing that for hundreds of years, too.
Right.
Yeah. Where are you in England?
London.
Oh, okay. I was stationed in Lakenheath, Mildenhall.
Oh,
Suffolk
I
County.
convention up at Mildenhall end of last year.
Suffolk County.
I went in there and I didn't realise it's an American air base. I just thought it was just another air base. We got them all over.
Yeah. Well, the main one was Lakenheath. That's where I was. What's that?
They had a Starbucks in US dollars. I was like, this is.
You had US dollars in your pocket, right? So you just pulled it out.
Well, people were like, do you want me to pay in dollars or pounds? I said, pounds is best, if I'm honest. I don't live on this base.
Right. All right, y'all. We got to call it a night. Haley, where can people find you online?
I'm on Instagram as Haley Martin Art, and then I have my webcomic Heroic Shenanigans, which is at heroicshenanigans.com. It's also on Webtoon. If you Google that name, spell it wrong, you'll probably still find it.
Pete, what about you? Where can folks find you online?
Just type in my name, Peter Clinton, and add art at the end of it. I'm everywhere except for OnlyFans.
And we've been trying to talk you into there.
If I could make money on it, I'd do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm thinking about starting OnlyFans and put up my feet.
Hey, there are special websites for that.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah. Getting the OnlyFans of that.
Roberta, it's great to see you again on Sunday night.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Where can
you can find me under my name, Roby Conroy, on Instagram and Facebook anytime.
Excellent. And Jerry, can anyone find you online?
Well, it takes a team of Huskies. JerryBingham.com. That's where you'll see the art I'm doing now for the most part. And I'm actually in an art show as of last weekend. I still have a painting there that needs to sell. So
you're in a gallery, aren't you?
What's that?
Don't you have a piece in a gallery now, right?
I have a piece in a gallery show. I'm not part of the gallery stable.
So have I at the moment.
What's that?
Yeah, Pete does too.
Jerry's bandwagon. I'm in a gallery at the moment as well. Although my art is my comic book art, bizarrely.
Yeah.
It's the only black and white pieces in there.
They won't let me put my comic book art in the Western Art Gallery, sadly. But
yeah, it doesn't have enough horses and shotguns in it, right?
Yeah, but I will be. I'm scheduled to be at Heroes Con this year. I think that's in June.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So and I'll be in a few more by the end of the year, probably.
That sounds good. You can find me on all the social medias, Roland Man. Sometimes it's Man Roland, and also look for Silverline. Jerry, hang out after the show. We'll chat a little bit. And until next time, remember to make mine Silverline. Good night, everybody.
I'm April Hunter. Make mine Silverline.
All right.